I walked out of work to an empty parking spot. My 2021 Camry, just paid off, was gone. I called my parents panicking. "Oh, honey, relax. We gave it to Felix. He needs it more." My brother had totaled 3 cars in 5 years. This was my first new car ever. I felt the blood drain from my face as my hand trembled. Felix. Of course it was Felix. My parents had given away my car without asking me. I hung up and dialed 911 to report my car stolen. The dispatcher asked for details about my vehicle, and I provided them through tears streaming down my face. Standing in the empty parking spot where my silver Toyota Camry should have been, I felt as if the ground beneath me had disappeared too. "Ma'am, can you verify you're the registered owner?" the dispatcher asked. "Yes, I am. The car is in my name. I made the final payment last week." My voice cracked as I said those words. Last week's celebration seemed like a cruel joke now. I had worked so hard for that car. Growing up, I watched my parents bend over backward for my younger brother Felix, while I was expected to figure things out on my own. When I needed money for college textbooks, Dad told me to be resourceful. When Felix needed a new laptop after spilling beer on his third one, they bought it without hesitation. "We've got officers in the area. Can you describe the vehicle again and provide the license plate number?" The dispatcher's voice pulled me back to the present. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. "It's a silver 2021 Toyota Camry, license plate JRT 487. I could picture the plate clearly, having proudly fastened it myself when the car was new. The pride I felt when I drove that car off the lot still burned bright in my memory. At 32 years old, I had saved for years while working full-time as a physical therapist. I remembered calling my parents that day, hoping they might finally acknowledge my achievement. "That's nice, honey," Mom had said, "but why spend so much on a new car? You could have bought used." The conversation quickly shifted to Felix's latest job interview. Classic. After hanging up with the dispatcher, I called my parents again, hands still shaking. "Mom, you can't just take my car and give it to Felix. That's stealing. I've reported it to the police." "Candace Marie Thompson." My mother's voice hardened. "You reported your own brother to the police? How could you?" "It's my car, Mom. I paid for it with my own money. Every single payment for 3 years. Felix's family. He needs reliable transportation for job interviews. You know he's been having a tough time since Amanda left him. So he gets my car? The one I just finished paying off? Without even asking me?" My voice rose with each question. "We tried calling you this morning, but you didn't answer." Dad's voice came on the line, apparently on speakerphone. "I was with Patience. That doesn't give you the right to take my property." "We still have the spare key from when we helped you pick it out," Dad said, as if that justified everything. They had come with me to the dealership 3 years ago, the one time they'd shown interest in my major purchase. "That doesn't make it okay to—" My phone beeped with an incoming call. "I have to go. It's probably the police." I switched over before they could respond. "Miss Thompson? This is Officer Patterson. We've located your vehicle." Relief flooded through me. "Oh, thank goodness. Where did you find it?" "It's parked at the Riverside Apartments, Space 34, Felix's apartment complex. That's my brother's place. He doesn't have permission to—" "Yes, we spoke with him," Officer Patterson interrupted. "He showed us documentation indicating your parents transferred the vehicle to him. He also had keys." My stomach dropped. "They can't transfer my vehicle. I'm the registered owner. The title is in my name." There was a pause. "Your parents claim they had authority to make the transfer. Since this appears to be a family dispute over property, we're treating this as a civil matter rather than criminal." "But it's my car." Tears welled up again. "I didn't give anyone permission to take it." "I understand your frustration," Officer Patterson's voice softened. "But without clear evidence of theft, our hands are tied. You'll need to resolve this through civil courts. I recommend speaking with an attorney." After hanging up, I sank onto the curb, burying my face in my hands. The car I had sacrificed so much for was sitting in my brother's parking space, and there was nothing the police would do about it. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. My phone buzzed with a text from my coworker Jenna. "Everything okay? Need a ride?" I looked up at the darkening sky, swallowed my pride, and texted back, "Yes, please. My car was stolen. By my family." The next morning, I borrowed Jenna's car and drove straight to my parents' suburban home in Oakwood Heights. Their modest two-story house with its perfectly trimmed hedges looked exactly as it always had, a picture of middle-class normalcy that now seemed like a facade. I had always associated this place with safety and security, but today it felt like I was walking into enemy territory. Mom answered the door in her gardening clothes, dirt smudged on her cheek. Her smile faltered when she saw my expression. "Candy, I was just about to call you. Come in and let's talk about this rationally." "Rationally?" I stepped inside, my voice shaking. "You stole my car and gave it to Felix. What's rational about that?" Dad appeared from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. "Lower your voice, Candace. We didn't steal anything. We merely redistributed a family resource to where it was most needed." "Family resource?" I stared at him in disbelief. "That car is not a family resource. It's my property. I worked 60-hour weeks for 3 years to make those payments." Mom guided me toward the living room. "Sit down, honey. Let's discuss this calmly." I remained standing. "I want my car back. Today." "Felix lost his job at the insurance company," Mom explained, as if I hadn't spoken. "He has interviews lined up, but his car broke down last week. The repair costs were too high." "You mean the used Nissan he drove recklessly until the engine gave out?" I countered. "That's his 4th car in 6 years, Mom." "People make mistakes," Dad said, setting his mug down with a thud. "Your brother is trying to get back on his feet. And I'm supposed to sacrifice everything I've worked for to make that happen? Again?" My voice cracked. "Why is it always me who has to give things up for Felix?" "Because you're the responsible one," Mom said, her tone suggesting this was a compliment. "You've always been able to take care of yourself. That doesn't mean you can take what's mine." I pulled out my phone. "I have the title and registration right here in my name. The car belongs to me legally." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "We still have the spare key from when we helped you purchase it." "Helped me? You came to the dealership. I paid every penny myself." "Candy," Mom's voice turned placating, "Felix will take good care of it. It's just until he gets back on his feet." A horrifying thought struck me. "Wait, did you clean out the glove compartment too?" My parents exchanged glances. "Felix mentioned he needed gas money," Dad said carefully. "You took my emergency cash?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "There was $800 in there." "We'll pay you back," Mom assured me. "But Felix needed it right away." "That was my safety net," I shouted, no longer caring about staying calm. "I keep it there in case of emergencies." "How could you?" The front door opened and closed, and I turned to see my older sister Jessica walk in, carrying a bag of groceries. "What's all the shouting about?" she asked, then saw me and stopped. "Oh. Did you know about this?" I demanded. "Did you know they gave Felix my car?" Jessica set the groceries down slowly. "We talked about it at dinner on Sunday." "What dinner?" "I wasn't invited to any dinner." Another glance between my family members confirmed my suspicions. "We had a family meeting," Jessica admitted, "about helping Felix get back on his feet." "A family meeting that didn't include me?" The betrayal expanded, encompassing not just my parents but my sister too. "So all of you decided to give away my car without even asking me?" "We knew you wouldn't agree," Dad said, as if this justified their actions. "Of course I wouldn't agree. It's my car." Jessica stepped forward. "Candy, try to understand. Felix is really struggling since Amanda left with the kids. He lost his apartment and had to move to that tiny place at Riverside. He needs reliable transportation for interviews. So let him borrow your SUV, Jess," I snapped. "Oh wait, you wouldn't do that because it's yours and you need it. But my car? Fair game, apparently." "That's different," Jessica protested. "I have the kids to drive around. School and soccer practice and I have patients to visit. I'm a home health physical therapist. I drive all day for work." "You can get a loaner from your company," Dad suggested. "That's not how it works. I use my own vehicle and get a mileage reimbursement." I ran my hands through my hair in frustration. "I can't believe this. You all sat around this table and decided to steal my car." "We didn't steal it," Mom insisted. "We borrowed it for Felix. Temporarily. Without asking me, without my permission. That's the definition of stealing, Mom." "Family helps family," Dad said firmly. "Your brother needs help right now." "And what about when I needed help?" I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. When I worked 2 jobs through college? When my first apartment flooded and I lost everything? Where was family helps family then? An uncomfortable silence filled the room. That was different, Mom finally said. You were always so independent. Because I had to be. The tears I'd been holding back spilled over. Because from day one, it was clear that Felix was the priority in this family. That's not true, Jessica protested weakly. It is true, and you know it. I grabbed my purse. I want my car back by tomorrow, or I'm filing a police report for grand theft auto and pressing charges against all of you. You wouldn't dare, Dad said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Try me. I headed for the door, then turned back, and I want my $800 back too. As I reached for the doorknob, Jessica called out, Candy, wait. Don't do anything rash. I paused but didn't turn around. We're family, she said, as if those 2 words could erase everything that had just happened. Family doesn't steal from each other, I replied and walked out the door. The law office of Melanie Foster occupied the 2nd floor of a converted Victorian house downtown. The waiting room featured worn but clean furniture, framed law degrees, and a coffee machine that had seen better days. I sat clutching a folder containing all my car documentation, my hands still shaking slightly from the confrontation with my family. After a 20-minute wait, a woman in her late 40s with short auburn hair and sharp eyes emerged. Candace Thompson? I'm Melanie Foster. Come on back. She led me to a small office lined with law books and family photos. After I explained my situation, she leaned back in her chair with a sigh. Unfortunately, this kind of family property dispute is more common than you might think, she said. The good news is that legally, you're on solid ground. The car is titled and registered in your name, and you have documentation showing you made all the payments. The bad news is that family cases get messy. So I can press charges for theft? I asked hopefully. You could try, but there are complications. Your parents had a key and could claim implied consent. They could argue they believed they had permission to lend the vehicle, especially since they helped you select it originally. But they didn't have permission. I believe you, she said gently. But it becomes a he said, she said situation. Civil court would be more appropriate, but even that has challenges. She glanced at her notepad. How much is the vehicle worth? Around $20,000, I replied. It's a 2021 Camry with low mileage. She nodded. And my retainer starts at $3,000 with an hourly rate of $250 after that. Depending on how much your family fights this, legal fees could run anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. My stomach sank. That's half the value of the car. I know. That's why these cases often settle out of court. Have you tried mediation? I just want my car back, I said, frustration building again. It's mine. I paid for it. Why should I have to negotiate? You shouldn't have to, she agreed. But sometimes the practical path isn't the same as the principled one. She handed me her card. Think about it. In the meantime, I can draft a formal demand letter for the return of the vehicle. That sometimes does the trick without further legal action. How much for the letter? $500. I winced but nodded. Let's do that. After leaving Melanie's office, I checked my watch. I was already late for my first patient appointment. I called my supervisor, Sarah, from the parking lot. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I had an emergency consultation with a lawyer. My car situation is more complicated than I thought. Candy, this is the 2nd time this week you've been late, Sarah said, her tone professional but concerned. Patients are complaining about schedule changes. Mrs. Abernathy has been waiting for 30 minutes. I know, I'm on my way now. I've been borrowing my friend's car, but she needed it this morning, so I had to wait until she finished her errands. I understand you're in a difficult situation, but our patients rely on consistency, especially the elderly ones who plan their entire day around our visits. I'm doing my best, I said, fighting back tears of frustration. Sarah's voice softened slightly. I know you are. You're one of our best therapists. But I need to be straight with you. If you can't resolve your transportation issues in the next 2 weeks, we'll have to reassign some of your patients to therapists with more reliable schedules. 2 weeks? But my car was stolen. This isn't my fault. I'm not assigning blame, Candy, but we have a responsibility to our patients. 2 weeks, okay? Let me know if there's anything the company can do to help in the meantime. I hung up and sat in Jenna's borrowed car, trying to calm my breathing. My career was now at risk too, all because my family thought Felix's needs trumped everything else, including my livelihood. As I drove to Mrs. Abernathy's house, my phone chimed with a notification. It was Amanda, Felix's ex-wife, sending me a direct message on social media. Curious, I checked it at the next stoplight. "Thought you should see this," she'd written with a link attached. I couldn't open it while driving, but as soon as I parked at Mrs. Abernathy's senior living community, I clicked the link. It led to Felix's social media page, which I normally avoided. What I saw made my blood boil. There was my car, my silver Camry, parked at Daytona Beach. Felix had posted a series of photos from a road trip to Florida with his friends Brad and Tyler, all taken over the past 3 days. "Much-needed guys trip," read the caption. "Thanks for the wheels, sis," followed by a laughing emoji. I scrolled through more photos. My car at South Beach, my car outside a nightclub, my car with Felix and his buddies holding beer cans in the front seat. And in one image, clearly visible, was a fresh dent in the passenger door that hadn't been there before. Job interviews? Reliable transportation for a new start? It had all been lies. Felix was joyriding across state lines in my stolen car, drinking in it, damaging it, and having the audacity to tag me in the photos as if I'd willingly lent it to him. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I called my parents, but the call went straight to voicemail. I sent the photo links to both of them with a single line. "Still think he needs it more than me?" Then I pulled myself together, plastered on a professional smile, and went in to help Mrs. Abernathy with her hip exercises, all while my life continued to unravel around me. I hadn't spoken to Aunt Linda in nearly 7 years, not since the blowout at Christmas when she accused my parents of playing favorites with Felix. Dad had asked her to leave, saying she was creating division in the family, and she'd been persona non grata ever since. Finding her current contact information required some detective work, but eventually I tracked her down through an old family friend. We agreed to meet at Riverside Cafe, a quiet spot downtown where I was unlikely to run into anyone from my family. I arrived early, nervous about reconnecting after so many years, especially under these circumstances. Linda walked in 10 minutes later, and I immediately recognized her even though her dark hair had streaks of gray now. She had the same sharp eyes as my father, but hers held a warmth his often lacked. "Candy?" She approached my table hesitantly. "I almost didn't recognize you. You were just a college kid last time I saw you." I stood and awkwardly offered my hand, but she pulled me into a hug instead. "Thank you for meeting me," I said as we sat down. "I was surprised to get your message," she admitted, but not surprised about why. History repeats itself in our family. The waitress took our coffee orders, and once she left, I explained everything that had happened with my car. Linda listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding as if confirming something she already knew. "I wish I could say I'm shocked," she said when I finished, "but this is exactly the pattern I tried to point out years ago. Your brother has always been the sun in your parents' solar system, and everyone else is expected to orbit around his needs." "Why, though?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. "Why him and not me or Jessica?" Linda stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "It started when Felix was born. He had some health issues, needed extra attention. Your parents got into the habit of prioritizing him, and it just never stopped, even after he was fine. By the time you came along, the dynamic was set. But I was always the responsible one," I said, hating how my voice still carried a childish plea for approval. "I did everything right." "Which made you easier to ignore," Linda said gently. "You didn't create crises that demanded their attention." I blinked back tears. "So I was punished for being good." "In a way, yes." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But Candy, that speaks to your strength, not your worthiness. You built yourself into a capable, independent adult despite their neglect, not because of it." Her words touched something deep inside me, a wound I hadn't realized was still open. "I just want my car back," I whispered. "Is that so wrong?" "No, it's not wrong, and I think I can help." Linda pulled out her phone. "Remember my friend Doug from the police department? He retired last year, but he still has connections. He's willing to talk to you." "About pressing charges against my family?" The thought made me queasy. Despite everything, About understanding your options. No pressure to do anything you're not comfortable with. She sent a quick text. He can meet us here in 20 minutes if that works for you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. While we waited for Doug, Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. There's something else you should know, Candy. Something I've held onto for a long time, waiting for the right moment. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were bank statements and a letter dated 15 years ago when I was in high school. What is this? I asked, scanning the documents. Your grandmother Thompson set up college funds for all 3 grandchildren before she died. Equal amounts for you, Jessica, and Felix. Did you know that? I shook my head, confusion growing as I continued reading. I never got any college money from Grandma. Because your parents liquidated your fund when you were 17. Linda's voice was tight with old anger. Felix had racked up gambling debts in his first semester at college, nearly $15,000. Your parents took your college fund to pay it off. I stared at the documents, the evidence of yet another betrayal. They told me Grandma only left money for Felix and Jessica because she died before setting up my fund. They lied. Linda's words were simple but devastating. I confronted them about it, which is why we had that fight at Christmas. They said Felix's future would have been ruined by those debts, that you were smart enough to get scholarships. I worked 30 hours a week all through college, I said numbly. I graduated with $28,000 in student loans that I just paid off last year. I know. I'm sorry I didn't find a way to tell you sooner. Linda looked genuinely regretful. But you were so young, and your parents convinced me it would only hurt you to know. A stocky man with salt and pepper hair approached our table. Linda, been a while. Linda stood to greet him. Doug, thank you for coming. This is my niece, Candy Thompson. Doug shook my hand with a firm grip. Linda filled me in on the basics. Sounds like you've got a car theft situation with family complications. The police already said it's a civil matter, I explained. Since my parents had a spare key and claimed they had authority to loan the car to my brother, Doug settled into a chair. That's typically how these situations play out, but there might be more to consider here. He pulled out a notepad. Your brother Felix Thompson, correct? When did he take possession of the vehicle? 4 days ago. My parents gave him my spare key without my knowledge. Doug made some notes. And you've confirmed he has the vehicle now? He drove it to Florida on a road trip with friends. He's been posting pictures all over social media. Doug's eyebrows rose. Florida? That crosses state lines. And who's the registered owner? I am. Just me. I have the title and registration. And does Felix have a valid driver's license? The question caught me off guard. I assume so? Why wouldn't he? Doug and Linda exchanged glances. Your brother has had 3 accidents in the past 5 years, right? Doug asked. Were any of them DUIs? The second one was, I recalled. About 3 years ago, he got community service and had to attend some classes. Doug nodded. Let me make a quick call. He stepped away from the table, phone to his ear. What's going on? I asked Linda. Doug thinks Felix might be driving on a suspended license. Her expression was grim. If so, that changes things legally. Doug returned 5 minutes later, a satisfied look on his face. Just as I suspected, Felix Thompson's license was suspended 8 months ago, following his 3rd accident. He completed the required alcohol education program, but never paid the reinstatement fees or filed the proper paperwork. My mind raced. So he's driving my car across state lines with a suspended license? Which makes it a much more serious situation, Doug confirmed. And if your parents knew about the suspended license when they gave him your car, they could potentially be charged as accessories. I don't think they know, I said, suddenly protective despite everything. They're blind when it comes to Felix, but they wouldn't knowingly break the law. Either way, this gives you leverage, Doug said. But there's something else you should know. He hesitated, glancing at Linda. This is where it gets complicated. I still have buddies in narcotics division. Your brother's name has come up in some of their investigations. Narcotics? Felix? Despite everything, this seemed impossible. He parties too much, but drugs? Not using. Selling. Doug's voice was matter of fact. Specifically, prescription medications. Nothing major league, but enough to be on their radar. It would explain the cash flow problems, the need for transportation. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. First my car, then the revelation about my college fund, and now this. How many more secrets was my family keeping? What do I do with all this? I asked, overwhelmed. That depends on what you want, Doug replied. If you just want your car back, we can use the suspended license information as leverage without getting into the other issues. If you want justice, there are other avenues. I don't want to send my brother to jail, I said quietly. I just want what's mine, and for my family to stop treating me like I don't matter. Linda put her arm around my shoulders. Then let's start there, one step at a time. As I left the cafe with Linda and Doug, I felt something I hadn't expected: strength. For the first time since finding my car missing, I wasn't just a victim of my family's manipulations. I had information, I had allies, and I had a plan. But I also had a decision to make. How far was I willing to go to stand up for myself, and at what cost to the family that had repeatedly betrayed me? I chose my parents' house for the confrontation, hoping familiar territory would keep things civil. Linda and Doug had helped me prepare, though they waited in a car down the street at my request. This was something I needed to do myself. Jessica answered the door, surprise flickering across her face. Candy, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. I need to talk to everyone, I said, walking past her into the living room where my parents sat watching television. Mom muted the TV. Candace, if you've come to argue again— I've come to resolve this situation, I interrupted, my voice steadier than I expected. I know Felix is driving my car with a suspended license. The silence that followed confirmed my suspicion. They hadn't known. That's ridiculous, Dad finally said, but uncertainty tinged his voice. Felix would have told us if his license was suspended. Like he told you he was taking my car to Florida for a road trip with his buddies? I pulled out my phone and showed them the social media posts, not for job interviews, for partying. Mom's face fell as she scrolled through the images. I'm sure there's an explanation. There is, I replied. Felix lied to you, and you believed him because you always believe him. But this time it's serious. He's driving illegally, across state lines, in a car he doesn't own. Dad's expression hardened. So you're threatening your own brother now? I'm stating facts. I've spoken with a lawyer and a former police detective. I have options, legal options, to get my car back. But I'd rather resolve this as a family. By involving lawyers and police? Jessica asked incredulously. That's your idea of a family resolution? My idea of family doesn't involve stealing from each other, I countered. But I'm willing to make a deal. I want my car back, undamaged, with a full tank of gas. I want my $800 returned. And I want an apology from all of you. The front door banged open before anyone could respond. Felix stormed in, his face flushed with anger. What the hell, Candy? You're investigating me now? He threw his phone onto the coffee table. Tyler just called to tell me some retired cop was asking questions about me all over town. I hadn't expected Felix to be back from Florida so soon. My carefully planned confrontation was spiraling out of control. Is it true? Mom asked him, her voice small. About your license? And the trip to Florida? Felix's eyes darted between us. Who cares where I went? It's just a car. It's my car, I said. And you lied about needing it for job interviews. I did have interviews, he shouted. I just took a break after. I deserve some fun after everything I've been through. And your license? Dad pressed. Is it suspended? Felix threw up his hands. It's a technicality. I completed the classes. I just haven't paid the stupid fees yet. Because you're broke, I said, despite Mom and Dad constantly bailing you out. That's enough, Candace, Dad warned. No, it's not enough. Something broke loose inside me, years of repressed resentment flooding out. You've been bailing him out his entire life. The gambling debts in college that you paid with my college fund, the rent when he faced eviction. How many times have you covered for him? College fund? What is she talking about? Jessica looked confused. Mom's face had gone pale. Who told you about that? Does it matter? It's true, isn't it? I turned to Jessica. Grandma left all three of us equal college funds. They used mine to pay off Felix's gambling debts. Jessica turned to our parents, shocked. Is that true? We did what was necessary, Dad said defensively. Felix was in trouble. And I wasn't worth protecting? My voice cracked. I worked through college. I graduated with massive debt while Felix got a free ride. We've helped Felix through some rough patches, Mom admitted, but he's always needed more support. Because you never make him face consequences. I was shouting now, unable to contain my emotions. You bail him out every time, and he never learns. That's not fair, Felix protested. I've had bad luck. Bad luck doesn't total 3 cars, I snapped. Bad luck doesn't explain a suspended license and gambling debts. You don't know anything about my life. Felix's face contorted with anger. Miss Perfect with her fancy career and her new car. Some of us struggle, you know. I know exactly how much you struggle, I said coldly. Doug Harper told me all about the prescription drugs you've been selling. Is that where the money went? Is that why you're always broke despite Mom and Dad's constant handouts? The room went deadly silent. You had no right, Felix whispered, his face ashen. You had no right to dig into my life like that. And you had no right to take my car, I countered. None of you did. Felix suddenly reached into his pocket and hurled something at me. My car keys clattered on the floor between us. Take the stupid car, he spat. But you're dead to me, Candy. Dead. Calling the cops on your own brother, investigating me like I'm some criminal. I bent to pick up the keys, relief flooding through me despite his harsh words. But as my fingers closed around them, Dad lunged forward and snatched them away. No, he said firmly. Giving the car back now would just teach Felix that he can cave under pressure. That's not the lesson I want my son to learn. It's not your decision to make, I protested. The car belongs to me. And you belong to this family, Mom said, stepping beside Dad. Family loyalty matters, Candy. You've always been the strong one. Felix needs this support right now. So do I. My voice broke completely. I need my car for work. I could lose clients. Why doesn't my need matter to you? You'll figure it out, Dad said confidently. You always do. It was the same answer they'd given me my entire life, and something inside me finally shattered. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm done being the responsible one who gets punished for it. I'm done being overlooked because I don't create enough drama. I walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. My car is parked outside, right? At least tell me that. Mom nodded reluctantly. I'll go check the condition it's in, and then I'm leaving, with or without the keys. I walked outside, blinking in the bright afternoon sunlight. My silver Camry was indeed parked at the curb, but my relief quickly turned to horror as I got closer. The front bumper was cracked, one headlight was broken, and there were several new scratches along the passenger side. When I peered through the window, I saw fast food wrappers scattered across the seats, and the unmistakable odor of marijuana seeped out when I tried the door. Taking a deep breath, I called Linda. The car's here, but it's damaged, and they won't give me the keys. Also, it smells like weed inside. Document everything, she advised. Take pictures of every scratch and dent. We'll figure out the next step. I was snapping photos when Felix stormed out of the house and down the driveway. Taking evidence? He sneered. Go ahead. Nobody's going to believe you anyway. You're just the jealous sister trying to get me in trouble. I don't want to get you in trouble, I said wearily. I just want my car back. Yeah, well, good luck driving it without keys. He walked past me toward his friend's truck waiting down the street. By the way, there might have been a little fender bender in Tampa. Nothing major. He strolled away laughing, leaving me standing beside my damaged car, feeling more alone than ever despite being just feet from my family home. The next morning, I sat in Attorney Foster's office reviewing my options. The pictures of my damaged Camry were spread across her desk alongside the documentation Doug had provided about Felix's suspended license. Given the new information, we have several potential avenues, Melanie explained. The unauthorized interstate transport of your vehicle combined with your brother's suspended license strengthens the criminal case substantially. What would happen to Felix if I pressed charges? I asked, still conflicted despite everything. Driving on a suspended license is a misdemeanor. Combined with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle across state lines, he could face significant fines and possibly jail time, especially given the evidence of drug use in the vehicle. I winced. Despite everything, the thought of sending my brother to jail didn't sit right with me. Are there other options? I asked. I just want my car back without further damaging my relationship with my family, if that's even possible at this point. Melanie nodded thoughtfully. We could approach this strategically. First, we document all damage to the vehicle and file an insurance claim reporting unauthorized use. That creates an official record without directly involving the police. My parents still have the keys, I reminded her. That's where the suspended license comes in, she said. We draft a formal letter informing your parents that by knowingly providing car keys to a driver with a suspended license, they're exposing themselves to liability. Most insurance policies have exclusions for unlicensed drivers. If Felix had an accident, their own assets could be at risk. The plan was pragmatic rather than vindictive, which appealed to me. Let's do it. Over the next week, I took decisive actions following Melanie's guidance. First, I documented everything and filed an insurance claim. Then I used my emergency savings to rent a reliable car for work, ensuring my patients wouldn't suffer further disruptions. Next, I met with a loan officer at my bank. Though it pained me to take on new debt right after paying off my car, I secured financing for a new vehicle just in case the Camry couldn't be recovered or was too damaged to repair properly. While waiting for these pieces to fall into place, I took practical steps to protect myself. I changed the locks on my apartment, updated passwords on all my accounts, and removed my parents as emergency contacts at work. Each action, though small, helped me reclaim a sense of control over my life. Through Doug's connections, I confirmed that my car had indeed been involved in a minor accident in Tampa 3 days earlier. Felix had backed into a streetlight but hadn't reported it to insurance or authorities, leaving the vehicle with the damaged bumper I'd photographed. Armed with this information, Melanie sent a formal letter to my parents outlining the legal and financial risks they were assuming by continuing to withhold my vehicle. The letter was professional but firm, detailing potential insurance complications and liability issues without explicitly threatening legal action. 3 days after the letter was sent, I received a terse text from my mother. We left your car keys in your mailbox. Vehicle parked on Elm Street near the library. Sorry about the damage. I rushed to the location, half expecting another trick. But there was my Camry, parked exactly where they said. The keys were indeed in my mailbox when I checked later. No personal delivery, no face-to-face apology, just problem solved at arm's length, typical of how my family handled difficult situations. The victory felt hollow as I drove my damaged car to a repair shop for assessment. The estimate came to nearly $3,000 for the bumper, headlight, and various scratches. My insurance would cover it, but I'd have to pay the $500 deductible and face increased premiums for a claim that wasn't my fault. As I was leaving the repair shop, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Candace Thompson?" a male voice asked when I answered. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Officer Brennan with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling to inform you that we have Felix Thompson in custody. You were listed as an emergency contact." My stomach dropped. What happened? He was pulled over for a broken taillight and found to be driving with a suspended license. The vehicle is registered to you, a 2021 Toyota Camry. I gripped the phone tighter. That's impossible. I have my car right here. The vehicle identification number matches your registration, Officer Brennan continued. License plate JRT 487, silver Toyota Camry. It took a moment for understanding to dawn. He switched the plates, I realized aloud. He must have stolen my license plate and put it on another car. That would explain the discrepancy, the officer agreed. We'll need you to come down to the station to sort this out. When I arrived at the sheriff's department, I was directed to a waiting area where, to my surprise, I found my mother already seated, looking distraught. "Candy," she said, rising when she saw me. "Thank goodness you're here. There's been a terrible mistake." "No mistake, Mom. Felix stole my license plate and put it on another car, probably to avoid getting pulled over with his suspended license." Her face crumpled. "The officer said they found pills in the car, prescription bottles with different names. He says they're charging him with intent to distribute." So, Doug's information had been accurate. Felix really was selling prescription medications. "They want $20,000 for bail," Mom continued. "Your father's contacting our bank, but we might need to borrow against the house. I thought maybe you could help with—" "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "He's your brother, Candy. And he stole my car, damaged it, stole my license plate, and apparently has been dealing drugs. I'm not bailing him out literally or figuratively. But family, Stops at criminal activity, I finished firmly. I love Felix, Mom. But helping him now isn't actually helping him. It's enabling behavior that's only getting worse. You don't understand. I do understand. Better than anyone. I met her eyes steadily. Every time you and Dad swoop in to save him, you rob him of the chance to grow up and take responsibility for his actions. Her phone rang before she could respond. She answered it, spoke briefly, then hung up looking defeated. Your father can only secure $15,000 from the bank. We're still $5,000 short for bail. I took a deep breath. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe Felix needs to face consequences for once. How can you be so cold? She asked, tears welling in her eyes. I'm not being cold. I'm being realistic. Felix is in serious trouble, Mom. This isn't a misunderstanding or bad luck. He made choices, repeatedly, that led him here. My mother's phone rang again. She checked the screen. It's your father. She walked away to take the call, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I had come to the station prepared to press charges about the license plate theft, but now I wondered if that was even necessary. Felix had finally encountered consequences he couldn't charm or manipulate his way out of. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part just felt sad for the little brother I used to protect from neighborhood bullies. Mom returned looking shell-shocked. Your father says we should let Felix stay in jail overnight to teach him a lesson. I can't believe he's suggesting that. For the first time in my life, I found myself agreeing with my father's approach to Felix, though I suspected his change of heart was motivated more by financial limitations than any real shift in perspective. I think Dad's right, I said gently. Felix needs to understand that his actions have consequences. Mom shook her head. I never thought you two would abandon your brother when he needs you most. The accusation stung, but I held firm. I'm not abandoning him, Mom. I'm refusing to rescue him from his own bad decisions. There's a difference. As she turned away, I realized a fundamental truth that had eluded me for years. My parents' constant protection hadn't been good for Felix any more than their neglect had been good for me. We'd both been damaged by their imbalanced approach to parenting, just in different ways. For the first time, I felt genuine compassion for my brother, even as I stood firm in my refusal to bail him out. Some lessons could only be learned the hard way, and it was long past time for Felix to learn them. 3 months passed, each day bringing small steps toward rebuilding my life and redefining my relationships. The repairs to my Camry cost more than expected, so I made the difficult decision to sell it. The car that had symbolized my independence now carried too many painful memories. With the proceeds and a modest loan, I purchased a practical navy blue Honda Civic. It wasn't as luxurious as the Camry, but it was reliable and, more importantly, entirely mine with no complicated family history attached to it. By focusing on extra shifts and weekend work, I gradually rebuilt my emergency savings to replace the $800 my parents had taken. I never did get that money back, but restoring the safety net myself gave me a sense of accomplishment and security. Felix accepted a plea deal that required 3 months in a rehabilitation program, followed by 2 years of probation and community service. The felony charges were reduced to misdemeanors, sparing him the worst consequences of his actions, but still serious enough to serve as a wake-up call. The first month, my parents called daily with updates on Felix's progress and thinly veiled suggestions that I should visit him. I maintained polite but firm boundaries, explaining that while I wished him well in recovery, I needed time and space to heal from my own emotional wounds. To my surprise, it was my father who reached out first with something resembling an apology. He came to my apartment one Sunday afternoon, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he said as I invited him in. She's still having a hard time with everything that happened. So am I replied honestly. He nodded, running a hand through his thinning hair. We sold the boat, he said abruptly. Got $17,000 for it. I remained silent, unsure where this was going. Dad pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and placed it on my coffee table. This is for you. To cover the repairs to your car and the $800 from the glove compartment, plus some extra for the trouble. I stared at the envelope without touching it. Why now? Felix is doing better in rehab, he said, his eyes fixed on the floor. He's talking about things. Patterns. Family dynamics. He cleared his throat. The counselors there have been asking us some hard questions about how we raised you kids, made us see some things differently. I see. I still didn't reach for the money. I'm not saying we were wrong about everything, Dad continued defensively. But maybe we weren't always fair to you. You made everything look so easy. It wasn't easy, Dad. It was just that nobody noticed when I struggled. He nodded slowly. I'm noticing now. It wasn't exactly the heartfelt apology I'd dreamed of, but from my stoic, proud father, it represented significant progress. I accepted the envelope with a simple, thank you, and we spent the next hour talking more openly than we had in years. The money felt like blood money at first. I considered not using it, but ultimately decided to donate it to New Beginnings, a women's shelter that had helped my coworker Jenna escape an abusive relationship years earlier. The donation felt like transforming something painful into something positive, breaking a cycle rather than perpetuating it. As spring turned to summer, I took another significant step by starting a support group at my church for people dealing with difficult family relationships. Our first meeting had just 5 attendees, but each shared stories that resonated deeply with my experience. For the first time, I felt not just understood but valued for the wisdom my struggles had given me. Through the support group, I met a diverse circle of friends who appreciated my empathy and insight. Marcy, a kindergarten teacher with controlling parents. Jack, a contractor rebuilding his life after his siblings stole his inheritance. Tara, a nurse navigating boundaries with her emotionally manipulative mother. We became a chosen family of sorts, offering each other the support and validation our biological families sometimes couldn't provide. 6 weeks into his rehabilitation program, Felix sent me a handwritten letter. Unlike his previous half-hearted apologies after various transgressions, this one felt different. He didn't make excuses or minimize his actions. Instead, he acknowledged the pain he'd caused and expressed genuine remorse. I've spent my whole life expecting to be rescued, he wrote. It never occurred to me to ask what that cost, the people doing the rescuing, especially you. I'm working to be someone who doesn't need rescuing anymore. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to change. I read the letter several times before responding with a brief note expressing appreciation for his insights and wishing him well in his recovery. It wasn't immediate forgiveness, but it was a door left slightly open for possible reconciliation when we were both ready. My relationship with my parents evolved slowly. We began with weekly phone calls, then cautious Sunday dinners. Mom suggested family therapy, which surprised me coming from someone who had always insisted our family was perfectly normal. Twice monthly sessions with Dr. Rivera helped us develop healthier communication patterns and begin addressing long-established dynamics. The problem wasn't that we loved Felix more, Mom admitted during one particularly emotional session. It's that we didn't trust you to need us, Candy. You were so capable that we convinced ourselves you were fine without our support. I needed you just as much as he did, I replied through tears, just in different ways. We know that now, Dad said quietly. And we're trying to do better. By the time autumn arrived, our family had reached a fragile new equilibrium. Felix completed his rehabilitation program and moved into a halfway house where he was required to maintain employment and attend regular counseling. He found work at a local garden center, modest work that nonetheless gave him a sense of purpose and structure he'd never had before. My Thursday evenings were now reserved for dinner with Aunt Linda, who had become the mentor and confidant I'd always longed for. On this particular Thursday, I arrived at her house to find her waiting on the porch with a warm smile. I have a surprise, she said, handing me a small gift bag. A little congratulations for 6 months of running your support group. Inside was a keychain with a simple, engraved message. Courage to change the things I can. I thought it was fitting, she explained as we walked to my car for our weekly dinner outing. You've shown remarkable courage, Candy. Not just in standing up for yourself, but in helping others do the same. As I drove us toward our favorite restaurant, Linda asked about my recent family therapy session. Better, I replied. Mom actually admitted that she enabled Felix because it made her feel needed. That's huge for her. And your brother? Have you seen him since he completed the program? We had coffee last week, I said. It was awkward, but not terrible. He's 90 days sober now. And how are you feeling about everything? Really feeling? I considered the question carefully as we waited at a traffic light. I'm cautiously optimistic. The hurt doesn't just vanish, but it's not as sharp anymore. And there's something empowering about knowing I can survive my family's disappointment, that I can set boundaries and still be okay. Linda smiled. That's the most valuable lesson any of us can learn, that we're enough on our own terms. The light turned green, and as I accelerated gently, I realized how much had changed in just a few months. The car I was driving, the family dynamics I was navigating, even my understanding of myself had all transformed. The journey had been painful, but I emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself. Later that evening, as I unlocked my apartment door, my phone chimed with a text from Felix. 6 months ago today, thank you for not bailing me out. It saved my life. I read it twice before responding simply, "You're saving your own life now. I'm proud of you for that." And I meant it. Because I had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all. True family support isn't about rescuing someone from consequences or sacrificing your own needs for theirs. It's about believing in their capacity to grow, even when that growth comes through difficult challenges. The car my parents took had been just a vehicle, but it catalyzed a transformation that money couldn't buy. In losing something I valued, I found something more precious: my voice, my boundaries, and a new definition of family based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between helping a family member and standing up for yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share it with them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it brings some comfort to know you're not alone if you're facing similar challenges in your own life.